Hi everyone. So today we're going to be discussing where it all went wrong for Microsoft with the Xbox One. Now, this is not a fanboy bashing video or anything like that. I have both consoles, I've put both through their paces, and I've been following the industry for a long time now. And it's very easy to see that there is a gap here between the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. Now, what we're starting to hear coming out from developers as well is that they're finding that they simply cannot hit the same quality of frame rate on the Xbox One as they are on the PS4. For instance, the next Tomb Raider Enhanced Edition, which is the next-gen version of the new Tomb Raider, will run at 30 frames a second on Xbox and 60 frames a second on PS4. Now, interestingly, developers have said that the Xbox One version will at times pitch up to around 40-45 frames a second, but in more intensive scenes, 30 frames a second is the lock. Now, what's really interesting here is we are dealing with very similar hardware on both consoles. However, it's where they diverge from each other. They both have the same Jaguar CPU-GPU combination cores, but the choice of memory that both manufacturers went for is really the decider here. Ultimately, Microsoft went with DDR3, that is standard memory that we would find in PCs, laptops, etc. Sony went for graphics DDR memory, GDDR5 effectively. Now that is the same graphics memory that we would put onto things like NVIDIA graphics cards, ATI graphics cards. It has an incredible amount of bandwidth and it's very, 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 very fast. Now where Microsoft made a trade-off is they went for DDR3, but they also went for a 32 meg ESX stick of memory in there as well, which is actually faster than GDDR5 in theory, but it all depends how it's being used and what it's being used for. What we're really seeing when we hear about frame rates being lower is the console struggling to push those textures around the scene, as well as obviously those textures filling the screen when you have information. So for instance, if we have a dark scene with a fire in the middle and lots of characters on screen at the same time, and they're all moving around, what we're kind of having to do with the system is we're having to render all of those individuals as they're moving. This is causing fill rate issues. And we also have the effects coming from the fire. Now, what we can sometimes see in these scenarios is that one console would effectively be struggling a little bit to keep all of that information moving on screen and updating textures and everything else it has to do. Now, really where the memory comes in, more importantly, is the faster the memory you have, the quicker you can get the textures from the drive up into memory, moving everything around, as well as holding all the other information the game has to do at the same time. Speed and bandwidth of the memory is absolutely key here, and it's very much always been a bottleneck in gaming. If you take DDR3 stick of memory, and there's lots of different kind of speeds and types within that kind of classification, you can see a big difference between using a slow stick of DDR3 versus the fastest performance stick of DDR3. Likewise with graphics cards, we see something similar. Old graphics card, slower. New graphics card, faster. Fairly simple. And so we should see exactly the same thing, DDR3 versus GDDR5. Ultimately, GDDR5 is faster memory, it is newer memory, it is going to perform much, much better. But here's the thing, where did it all go wrong for Microsoft? Because coming out of the Xbox 360, it was almost unbeatable, really. They could have launched, well, as they did, an absolute piece of junk, and people would have bought it. But now what we're seeing really is a console which is a bit of a lame duck in the market. Where it really went wrong for Microsoft is they designed by committee. They didn't design by gamers. And actually, in many respects, this is where Sony should get a big round of applause, because they listened to the communities. They made a console that games developers and gamers could really invest in. And that came from a technical understanding of what would be required over the next 6 years for next-gen consoles. They've got to be able to compete and beat PCs in most cases. Certainly as we start to see a decline in the PC industry, it becomes even more important that consoles pick up the power mantle effectively. Otherwise, we're going to be left with ARM-based CPUs in mobile devices with not the best GPU packages to really be our next-gen gaming systems. So it becomes even more strange that Microsoft would pick DDR3 at a time when, industry-wise, GDDR5 would be the future-proofing technology to go for. But really where I think it all comes down to for Microsoft is They built an entertainment device, and an entertainment device, first and foremost, is about streaming pictures of TV shows, movies, and music. That is what an entertainment device is. Its secondary function in Microsoft's eyes appears to have been building actually something to play games on. And so what they've done is they kind of messed up the spec right from the word go by thinking about the industry in the wrong way. They wanted to take control of the living room. They didn't want to take control of gamers. And essentially, they built a console which was cost effective to put into living rooms. Except they didn't, because somewhere along the line, someone decided you had to force the Kinect in there as well. Because somehow that makes interacting with entertainment, watching a film, so much more enjoyable. No, it doesn't, because Kinect doesn't work. The Kinect 1 didn't work. The Kinect 2 doesn't work. It is a flawed concept. It is a flawed piece of hardware, and it's a flawed integration with the console itself of the Xbox One. The whole thing is just a bit of a mess. So really, from Microsoft's point of view, there's very little they can actually do now to change this around for themselves. If they were following my advice, I would say by 2016 you need to have a revisioned console out. You need to move the graphics spec on. As far as moving to GDDR5 is concerned, the Kinect needs to be removed and become an optional extra again. And, well, let's face it, the console physically needs a redesign. It's far too big for the work it's actually doing. Everything that we've seen coming out of Microsoft with some of the executives that have been leaving, and some of the executives that were, forced out before the Xbox One was actually launched, or potentially even went into development, says that Microsoft unfortunately has no skills left when it comes to delivering on the Xbox One promise. To me, it does feel like Microsoft just, committed themselves to death on this one, and it's meant that they've delivered a substandard product which ultimately is overpriced in the market and doesn't deliver what gamers actually are looking for, which, no matter who you ask really, it's about performance, guys. If one console is running at 60 frames a second and the other one is running at 30 frames a second for the same game, offering the same content, which one will gamers feel is the right console for them? I'm afraid they're going to go with the one that provides the smoothest frame rate. 60 frames a second should be the bare minimum games are hitting, and that should be at 1080p or as close as possible. What Microsoft is offering is unfortunately 720p, 960p gaming at 30 frames a second. That isn't good enough, and it certainly isn't going to hold them over this next period of 6 to 7 years, especially when, if rumours are true, Nintendo's Fusion project is going to deliver some pretty stonking hardware in 2016 that could very well blow Microsoft out of the water into third place. Do keep your eyes on this channel. Do please subscribe as well. We will be taking a look at what went wrong with the PlayStation 4 and also the Wii U as well. So, like I say, this video is not about bashing Microsoft as such. It's about discussing where it went wrong for them. And ultimately, things go wrong for all of the manufacturers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Do please remember to like and comment. And if you'd like to, please subscribe. You can also visit our website and download our Android app. If you do subscribe, you'll be getting a daily dose of the latest tech news, hardware reviews, Android games, consoles, and basically an honest opinion direct from the UK. Stay tuned, stay Androidizen.